internal carotid artery. Internal means inside. Okay, so it has got no branches in the neck. It goes inside the skull and supply the brain. Okay, so the internal carotid artery supplies the brain through circle of Willis. Okay, so they supply through the circle of Willis. What is the circle of Willis? This is the uh, two or three arteries which come together near the base of the brain. Okay, they form a circle. Okay, so this is called as anastomosis. So this is taking place between internal carotid artery here and basilar artery. Okay, the details of this we will see in the neurology when we are talking about the brain. Okay, right now you remember circle of Willis, internal carotid artery and basilar artery. Okay, and is located in the base of brain. Okay, because you know that the brain needs a huge amount of blood supply, and if blood supply to the brain is lost, okay, immediately the person can go in for coma and death. Okay, now the next one, the abdominal arteries. Okay, the abdominal arteries. So there are so many arteries in the abdomen. Okay, which is arising from the abdominal aorta. Okay, so once the aorta from the thorax it enters into the abdomen. Okay, so here you can see that from the thorax it is entering into the abdomen. There are many branches. Okay, now how can I divide these branches? Okay, now listen, see here, this you can say like there are paired arteries and unpaired arteries. Paired arteries means they are in two. Unpaired means they are only single. Now, from the anterior aspect of the abdominal aorta, there arises this branch from the abdominal aorta, which is the celiac trunk. Okay, celiac trunk, or it's also called as celiac artery. Okay, celiac trunk or celiac artery. The next branch you come down in this picture, and here you can see there is another one branch which is arising from the anterior part of the aorta, which is called as superior mesenteric artery. Okay, superior mesenteric artery. Okay, then you come down, there is another artery which arises from the anterior part of the aorta, which is the inferior mesenteric artery. All right, so the abdominal aorta from the anterior aspect gives rise to three arteries. Celiac trunk or celiac artery, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery. Okay. Now after this, the abdominal aorta separates into two parts. Okay. This is called as common iliac artery. So there is right common iliac artery and left common iliac artery. Okay, common means it is before it branches, it's called as common. Okay, now this common iliac artery divides into right external iliac artery, okay, and internal iliac artery. Similarly, on the left side, external iliac artery, internal iliac artery, just like carotid artery. You have seen the carotid artery, right? Common carotid dividing into external and internal. Okay, so once again, the abdominal aorta, after it passes through the diaphragm, there are three branches: celiac artery, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, then near the end, the aorta divides into two common iliac arteries. Okay, two common iliac arteries. This common iliac arteries divide into external iliac and internal iliac arteries. Okay, any doubts until now? So three branches: celiac artery, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, common iliac arteries on both sides, external iliac and internal iliac. All right. Any doubts? Okay. Now let's see the other paired arteries. Paired artery means which is coming in branches. Okay. Now you can see on either side there is kidney. Okay, there is kidney. So there is a renal arteries. Okay, there are two kidneys in our body. So the right renal artery and left renal artery. Okay, right renal artery and left renal artery. Similarly, we have the reproductive organs. Okay, the reproductive organs. In males, it is testis, and in females, it is ovary. Okay, both these are called as gonadal arteries. Okay, gonadal artery is a common terminology for both testis and ovary. Okay, so there is a right gonadal artery and a left gonadal artery. Okay, so which goes and supplies the reproductive organs. If it is a male it is called as testicular artery. If it is a female, it is called as ovarian artery. Okay, now we will see again the abdominal aorta, which is a continuation of the thoracic aorta. We have seen the celiac artery or the celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, then we have seen renal arteries, gonadal arteries, common iliac arteries, internal and external iliac arteries. Okay, so we have seen all these arteries. Okay, any doubts until now?
Doctor, you said when the arteries have a branch, it's called a name. What is the name for the branch?
These are the arteries which arise from the aorta. From the aorta, the branches are called as arteries. The branches which come from the aorta, they are called as arteries. They are given, each one is given a different name, just like different streets. Say a main road is going, and from the main road there is a small street which comes up. Each one is given a name, right? So like that, each street is like each artery is given a name. Now from the abdominal aorta, celiac trunk emerges, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, two renal arteries on either sides, two gonadal arteries on either sides. Then after this, the abdominal artery divides into right common iliac and left common iliac. Now this right common iliac divides into right external, right internal. Similarly, the left common iliac divides into left internal iliac and left external iliac. Okay.
Doctor, but you mentioned that branched arteries has a common name. So what is it? Not the detailed name, like all of them together. When there is a branched artery, what do we call them all together?
No, we don't call a name. I didn't say that. Each artery is given a name. There is no common name. No, you mean the common iliac arteries? Do you mean the common iliac arteries? Excuse me. See here, the abdominal aorta near the end, it divides into common iliac. Okay, common iliac arteries, right and left. This common iliac arteries divide into external and internal iliac arteries. Okay, right, the internal and external iliac arteries. Okay, all right. So from the abdominal aorta, there is celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery, renal arteries, gonadal arteries, common iliac arteries, internal and external iliac arteries. Now, after this, each one I have given like what are the parts which it supply. Now, if you see the celiac trunk supply the stomach, spleen, and liver. Where is the celiac trunk? It is located here. Okay, the celiac trunk. It goes and supplies the stomach because stomach is present in the upper part of the body, right? So it supplies the stomach, the liver, and spleen. Okay, so stomach, liver, and spleen are supplied by the celiac trunk. Superior mesenteric artery. The superior mesenteric artery, they supply the small intestines, ascending colon, and a part of the transverse colon. Now, this we will read in the GIT module. Okay, so we will be seeing about this in the gastrointestinal module. What is the ascending colon and transverse colon? Okay, so right now you may not be able to understand, but once we cover there, we will be able to understand. Okay, we will be repeating it the same thing. Okay, the inferior mesenteric artery, they supply the remaining part of the transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, and rectum. All these are part of gastrointestinal system. Okay, from the stomach, the food goes into small intestine. Okay, then it goes into ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, and then rectum. Okay, so until the part of the transverse colon, it is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery. The remaining part is supplied by the inferior mesenteric arteries. Now the renal arteries, they supply the kidneys. The gonadal arteries, they supply the reproductive organs, the testicular arteries in males, and in females, the ovarian arteries. Okay, so these are the branches from the abdominal aorta. Now let's see like what are the branches which arises from the upper limb. Okay, the upper limb. The upper limb, you know that it is composed of shoulder, arm, forearm, and hand. Okay, now from the aorta you already know that there is subclavian artery. Okay, subclavian artery. You know that the right subclavian artery is arising from brachiocephalic artery. Okay, in the first slide I showed you. The left one is arising from the arch of aorta directly. Okay, now this subclavian artery, okay, why it is called a subclavian artery? So you know clavicle bone. Okay, you know there is a clavicle bone. So since this passes below the clavicle, okay, since it passes below the clavicle, this is called as subclavian arteries. Okay, subclavian artery. And from there, it enters into this part, okay, just below the shoulder joint on the inner aspect, which is called as axilla. Okay, the axilla is the part which is between the upper limb and the thorax. Okay, the inner part. Okay, so this portion it's called as axilla. Okay, so axilla, so the subclavian artery continues as axillary artery. After the first strip, it is called as the same artery is being given different names. Okay, so subclavian artery, axillary artery, and after that, this axillary artery goes into the arm, and here is given different name which is called as brachial artery. Okay, so brachial artery. So subclavian artery, axillary artery, brachial artery. Okay, in the arm it is called as brachial artery. Now in the elbow joint, okay, in the elbow joint, it's called as cubital fossa. Okay, this part. Okay, in the elbow joint, it is called as cubital fossa. Here the brachial artery divides into two parts. You know there are two bones here, right? Radius and ulna. Okay, so there will be one artery which goes on the radial side and the other artery which goes on the ulnar side. Okay, so the one which goes on the lateral side, it's called as radial artery, and the one which goes on the medial side is called as ulnar artery. Okay, so once again, subclavian artery continues as axillary artery beyond the first strip, and then later on it continues as the brachial artery until the elbow or the cubital fossa, and from the cubital fossa it divides into radial artery and ulnar artery. Okay, radial on the lateral side and ulnar on the medial side. Okay, so these are the upper limb arteries. Now let's see the lower limb arteries. Okay, the lower limb arteries. We have seen the abdominal aorta, right? The abdominal aorta divides into common iliac. Okay, right and left common iliac. The common iliac divides into external iliac and internal iliac. Okay, now this external iliac artery. Okay, the external iliac artery continues in the lower limb. Okay, the external iliac artery continues in the lower limb. In the thigh, this artery is called as femoral artery. Okay, it's called as femoral artery. Okay, so the artery, the external iliac artery, which is present, which continues in the thigh, it's called as femoral artery. Near the knee joint. Okay, so near the knee joint, this femoral artery is given another name. So this is called as popliteal artery. Okay, it's called as popliteal arteries. Okay, near the knee joint, it is called as popliteal artery. And after the knee joint, you know, near the tibia and fibula, okay, so it divides into two parts. Okay, one artery is present anterior to the tibia and the other artery is present posterior to the tibia. So that's why these are called as anterior tibial artery and posterior tibial artery. Okay, anterior tibial artery and posterior tibial artery. Okay, now from the anterior tibial artery, there are certain branches in the foot on the anterior aspect, on the dorsal aspect of the foot, which is called as dorsalis pedis artery. Okay, dorsalis pedis artery. Okay, so once again I am telling you, the external iliac artery, which is a continuation from common iliac, continues in the thigh as femoral artery. Okay, now from the femoral artery, it continues as popliteal artery. And from the popliteal artery, it divides into anterior tibial artery and posterior tibial artery. Okay, both on the anterior and posterior aspect of the tibia. Now from the anterior tibial artery, there are branches in the foot on the dorsum aspect of the foot, which is called as dorsalis pedis artery. Okay, so these are the upper limb arteries and lower limb arteries. Okay, so once again we will see about the abdominal arteries. The abdominal artery has got three branches from the anterior side: celiac artery, which supply the stomach, liver and spleen; superior mesenteric artery supplies small intestine, the large intestine, the ascending colon and transverse colon, a part of the transverse colon. Okay, the inferior mesenteric artery, they supply the remaining part of the transverse colon until the rectum. Okay, now the side branches, okay, the pad branches which arises from the sides, two renal arteries, two gonadal arteries. Okay, which gonadal arteries goes and supply the reproductive organs. Okay, now the common iliac artery. The common iliac artery divides into external iliac and internal iliac. Okay, now let's see the upper limb arteries. You know the subclavian artery. The subclavian artery on the right side, it arises from brachiocephalic artery, and on the left side, it's a direct branch from the arch of aorta. The subclavian artery continues in the axilla, it's called as axillary artery. And then it continues in the arm as brachial artery. And near the elbow, which is the cubital fossa, it divides into radial artery and ulnar artery. Okay, in the lower limb arteries, the external iliac artery, which is a branch from the common iliac artery, continues in the thigh as femoral artery because femur is present here, right? The femur bone is present here, so that's why this is called as femoral artery. And in the knee joint, it is referred to as popliteal artery. Okay, and after the knee joint, it divides into two parts, one anterior to the tibia and one posterior to the tibia, anterior tibial artery and posterior tibial arteries. Any doubts until now? Do you have any doubts?
No, doctor.
Okay,
No,
I
sir.
can I can understand that there are a lot of terminologies, so that's why I said that there are you need to note down the names for each one, okay? Because the names are quite confusing. So unless you keep on revising, it might be difficult for you. All right. So try to go through this lecture because it's a bit confusing one, and there will be some at least 4 to 5 questions from this one. Okay. So you need to go through the all the branches, okay, which arises. These are the arterial branches. Okay. Now let's see the venous drainage. You know the venous drainage, they carry deoxygenated blood, that is impure blood or deoxygenated blood. That is where the oxygen is less. Now, while when we talk about the venous drainage, we talk from the peripheries towards the heart because the direction of blood flow is like that. See, the arteries, the blood is arising from the heart and then it goes into aorta and then to different parts of our body. But veins, the impure blood is starting from the peripheries and then it goes into the heart. So we are going to see from the peripheries, that is from the terminal, from the lower limb, upper limb, and finally how it goes and drains into the heart. Okay. Now in the lower limb, okay, in the lower limb, there are two superficial veins. Okay, two superficial veins. Okay, so one is called as great saphenous vein or long saphenous vein. Both are same. Okay, great superficial because we can see them in persons who are very thin. Okay, and persons who are standing for a long time, you may be able to visualize this vein, which is called as long saphenous vein or great saphenous vein. Okay, the other vein is short saphenous vein, also called a small saphenous vein. Okay, great saphenous vein, short saphenous vein. Okay, the great saphenous vein is along the medial side of the thigh. The short saphenous is along the lateral aspect of the is present along the lateral aspect of the thigh. So two superficial veins. Okay, great saphenous vein and short saphenous vein. Now the deep veins are given the same name as arteries. Okay, we have seen the arteries, right? So, but the thing is, we have to go from on backwards. So, you know, there is an anterior tibial vein, posterior tibial vein. Now, this anterior and posterior tibial vein, they join together to form popliteal vein. Okay, the popliteal vein continues in the thigh as femoral vein. Okay, the femoral vein then continues and goes inside the abdomen as external iliac vein. Okay, remember vein, vein, vein. When you are talking about venous drainage, it is vein. Don't, I have seen even good students writing it down as arteries by mistake. Okay, so here it starts as anterior tibial vein and posterior tibial vein. They both join together to form the popliteal vein. Okay, and this popliteal vein continues as the femoral vein. Okay, and then it enters into the abdomen as external iliac vein. Okay, the same like that of arteries. Okay, but in the reverse direction. Now the venous drainage in the abdomen. Now here there are certain modifications because you know that GIT, the gastrointestinal tract, the main function of it is to absorb nutrition. Okay, because it has to absorb food from the stomach. So there are some special circulations in the abdomen. Okay, now what is this special circulation? This is called as portal circulation. Portal circulation. Okay, so why it's called as portal circulation? Because it ports. Okay, like it takes the food, the absorbed food from the small intestines, and it enters into the liver. Okay, it enters into the liver. It takes the food. You know, the stomach action is to digest, make the food into small particles, and in the small intestine the food is absorbed. Okay, and when the food absorbed the food, it goes inside the it goes towards the liver through the portal circulation. Okay, it goes into the liver where metabolism takes place. The energy is produced. Okay, the energy is produced in the liver. Okay, now here you can see that portal vein. Okay, the portal vein. Now this portal vein, it's formed by two veins. Okay, the portal vein which transports all the nutrition from the small intestines to the liver. Okay, the portal vein. This is formed by two veins. What vein? One is called as superior mesenteric vein. Can you see the superior mesenteric vein? The superior mesenteric vein. And the other one is splenic vein. Okay, the splenic vein. So the splenic vein and the superior mesenteric vein join together and they form the portal vein. Okay, the superior mesenteric vein and the splenic vein join together to form the portal vein. Okay, so this portal vein is exclusively present only in GIT, and it helps in transporting the food from the small intestine to the liver. Now the venous drainage in thorax. In thorax, you know that there are intercostal veins. Okay, so all this intercostal, that is between the ribs. Okay, between the ribs. Now the intercostal veins on the right side. Okay, on the right side, they all join. You can see the 11th, 12th, 13th. You know there are 12 ribs, right? So in between the ribs, there will be intercostal veins. All these intercostal veins, they join together to form azygos vein on the right side. Okay, azygos vein on the right side. On the left side, it is called as hemiazygos vein. Okay, it is called as hemiazygos vein. Okay, because it is not continuous, it is broken down. You can see the lower intercostals, they come as separate, and the upper intercostals on the left side, they come as separate. So this is called as hemiazygos vein. But ultimately this hemiazygos vein also drains into the azygos vein. What is the meaning of drain? How the blood flows from one part to another part. Okay, so the blood from the intercostal veins, they go into the azygos vein. Okay, from the hemiazygos, it goes into the azygos. Okay, so azygos veins and hemiazygos veins, which are present in the thorax. Now the upper limb veins. Okay, the upper limb veins, here also there are same veins, you know, radial vein, ulnar vein, brachial vein. Okay, so all those veins are present. Axillary vein, subclavian vein. Okay, all those veins are present. Okay, apart from this, there are two more veins which are present superficially. You know, in the upper limb there is great saphenous vein and short saphenous vein, right? So similarly, in the upper limb, there are two venous channels, superficial veins. Okay, the one on the medial side is called as basilic vein. You know what is medial? Medial is closer to the center of the body in the anatomical position. So the basilic vein is on the medial side, and the cephalic vein. The cephalic vein is on the lateral side. Okay, so the cephalic vein, and this is the basilic vein. Okay, the basilic vein and the cephalic vein. Now both the cephalic and the basilic vein, they are joined near the elbow by another vein which is called as median cubital vein. Okay, median cubital vein. Look at the spelling, N. It's not medial. Median cubital vein. Now, if you would have gone for any blood test, okay, so where do they draw the blood? They draw the blood from the elbow, right? So which vein do they draw the blood from? They draw it from the median cubital vein. Okay, so they draw the blood from the median cubital vein. All right. So the cephalic vein and the basilic vein are joined near the elbow by the median cubital vein. Now the head and neck veins, we have seen carotid arteries, right? Now in the veins, there are no carotid veins. Instead, they are called as jugular veins. Okay, they are called as jugular veins. The internal jugular vein and the external jugular vein. Okay, the internal jugular vein drains the venous drainage from the brain. Okay, you know, internal carotid artery, they supply the brain artery. Okay, now the internal jugular vein, they collect all the deoxygenated blood from the brain. Okay, then the subclavian vein, you can see the internal jugular vein is coming here. The subclavian vein joins with the internal jugular vein to form the brachiocephalic vein. Okay, so there are brachiocephalic veins. So the internal jugular vein and the subclavian vein, they join together to form the brachiocephalic vein. Okay, now these are the veins in the brain. We will see that in the brain nervous system, not now. Okay, but try to remember only 3 veins right now. Sorry, 2 veins. The sagittal sinus and the cavernous sinus. Okay, only these 2 veins you remember now. The remaining veins we will see in the neurology module. Okay, so sagittal sinus, cavernous sinus. These are veins which are present inside the brain. And all these veins which are present inside the brain, they will drain finally into the jugular vein. Okay, so they will drain directly into the jugular vein. Now we have seen the brachiocephalic vein, right? So there is the right brachiocephalic and the left brachiocephalic vein. How is the brachiocephalic vein formed? By the subclavian vein and internal jugular vein. Okay, the right subclavian and right internal jugular vein join together to form right brachiocephalic vein. Similarly, on the left side, the left subclavian vein and the left internal jugular vein, they join together to form the left brachiocephalic vein. Okay, remember there are two brachiocephalic veins, but there is only one brachiocephalic artery. Okay, and if another thing, if you observe, the right brachiocephalic vein is short, whereas the left brachiocephalic vein is long. Okay, why? Because the right atrium, you know, the heart, there is right atrium. Okay, so the right atrium is located on the right side of the body. Okay, so the left brachiocephalic vein travels all the way and then joins with the right brachiocephalic vein to form the superior vena cava. Okay, the superior vena cava. Okay, The inferior vena cava, how is it formed? You already know the same thing like that of arteries. It's the same thing of that of arteries, but in reverse direction. External iliac vein joins with the internal iliac vein. External iliac vein joins with the internal iliac to form the common iliac vein. The common iliac veins on right and left, they join together to form the inferior vena cava. Okay, there will be renal veins, okay, as well as the gonadal veins. Okay, gonadal veins, renal veins are present. There is no celiac trunk and all. Okay, in the venous drainage, there is no celiac trunk. Okay, so just this common iliac, the external iliac and the internal iliac veins joining together to form the common iliac veins. These two common iliac veins join together to form the inferior vena cava. Okay, and then the superior and inferior vena cava, both of them, they open into the right side of the heart, that is into the right atrium. All right. So once again, I will just revise the venous drainage. The venous drainage of the lower limb. There are two superficial veins in the lower limb, great saphenous vein and short saphenous vein. Okay. The other venous drainage from the lower limb are same that of arteries but in reverse direction. Anterior tibial vein and posterior tibial vein. They join together to form the popliteal vein. The popliteal vein continues as the femoral vein. The femoral vein then continues as the external iliac vein. In the abdomen, there is a special venous drainage which is the portal circulation, okay, which is mainly formed of portal vein. Now this portal vein is formed by the union of superior mesenteric vein and the splenic vein. Okay, superior mesenteric and the splenic vein. Now in the thorax there is intercostal veins. Okay, on the right side there is azygos vein and on the left side there is hemiazygos vein. Okay, hemiazygos vein. The upper limb veins, same like that of arteries, like radial vein, ulnar vein, okay, joining together to form brachial vein. Okay, the brachial vein then continues as axillary vein and the subclavian vein. Apart from it, there are superficial veins. One on the medial side, which is called as basilic vein, and one on the lateral side, which is called as cephalic vein. Now, these two veins are joined together by the median cubital vein, which is the common site for withdrawing the blood. Now, the jugular in the neck, instead of carotid arteries, there are jugular veins. The internal jugular vein drains most of the blood from the brain. Okay, the internal jugular then joins with the subclavian vein to form the brachiocephalic vein. Okay, so the venous drainage in the brain, sagittal sinus, cavernous sinus is present. All the venous drainage, they finally drain into the jugular vein. Okay, the internal jugular vein. The brachiocephalic vein, which is formed by the subclavian and internal jugular veins on the right and left side, they join together to form the superior vena cava. Okay, now the inferior vena cava is formed by the union of external iliac and internal iliac. Okay, so this external and internal iliac join together to form the common iliac. Okay, this common iliacs join together to form the inferior vena cava. Okay, the renal veins drain here into this, and the gonadal veins, they also drain into this. Okay, then this inferior vena cava passes through the diaphragm to enter into the heart. Which chamber of the heart? The right atrium of the heart. All right. So with this, we come to the end of the systemic circulation. Okay, so if you have any doubts, you can ask me now.
Doctor, now we have the same parts we said about them, arteries and veins.